Okay, just take a second and picture some of the amazing geometry you see in nature. Like a perfect snowflake or maybe a nautilus shell, that spiral.
Or even a sunflower, how the seeds are arranged. Yeah.
Exactly. And even our own DNA, right? That double helix, it all kind of hints at something deeper, like a hidden order.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're doing a deep dive into sacred geometry, and honestly, this might give you a totally new way to look at the universe and maybe yourself too.
Yeah, what's really cool about sacred geometry, I think, is just how, well, big it is. It's not just pretty shapes. It feels like this meeting point, where physical stuff, matter, connects with consciousness.
Like science meets spirituality.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
A bridge between them. And you see these patterns everywhere, from tiny atoms way out to, like, galaxies.
And it's ancient too, isn't it? Like the pyramids in Egypt or those big Gothic cathedrals.
Right, or mandalas from India, Islamic art. Those weren't just random designs. They clearly understood something fundamental about these shapes. They encoded meaning into them.
Okay, so let's really get into that idea of the patterns. The material we looked at really hammers this home. The same geometric ideas showing up in totally different cultures, separated by time and space.
And crucially, inside us too. In our biology, how cells divide, the structure of atoms, how galaxies spin.
It's kind of mind-bending, actually. It really makes you ask, is there some kind of, I don't know, mathematical language underpinning everything, a sort of cosmic blueprint?
It definitely pushes you in that direction. And, the ancients seem to think so. Our sources talk about these shapes being like the fingerprints of the creator.
Interesting phrase.
Yeah, and Plato, he called them forms of ideas, like the perfect blueprints behind reality. And the Pythagoreans, well, math and geometry were basically their religion, the keys to understanding the divine.
They saw them as more than just math then, more like sacred.
Exactly. They believed these forms had inherent meaning, a connection to the cosmos itself.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. The stuff we read suggests that modern science is actually starting to kind of catch up with this ancient thinking, using its own language, of course.
Right. Things like fractal mathematics, quantum physics, research into energy fields, even consciousness studies.
They're all pointing towards these geometric patterns being maybe more than just nice to look at.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That they might actually carry energy or information, that they could influence how matter organizes itself, how life develops, maybe even our own thoughts and feelings.
Wow. Okay. So for our deep dive today, what's the mission? What are we trying to unlock here?
Well, I think the goal is really to try and decode these geometric principles, the ones that seem to be at the heart of everything, understand the universal patterns.
And maybe see how we can use them, like for ourselves, activating potential, reaching higher states of awareness, that kind of thing.
Exactly that. And to do it, we're pulling from all sorts of places, right? Ancient stuff like the Dead Sea Scrolls, Hermetic texts, alchemy, but also looking at sacred geometry itself, energy, vibration, consciousness. It's a rich mix.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start building that foundation. Talk about the science behind it, the energy principles. Because like you said, the sources argue this isn't just, mystical woo-woo. There's a real basis in nature.
And a key starting point, often, is the flower of life pattern. Maybe you could describe that for everyone.
Sure. Okay, so picture 19 circles, all overlapping perfectly, fitting together. And then there are these partial circles around the edge, 36 of them, finishing the shape. It looks kind of like a flower, hence the name.
Right, very intricate.
But the really amazing thing is, apparently you can find the templates for almost all the basic geometric shapes hidden inside that one pattern.
It's like a master blueprint.
Yeah. And get this, the way a fertilized egg divides. One cell becomes 2, then 4, then this little ball called a morula, then the blastocyst. Apparently, that whole process mirrors the geometry in the flower of life.
So biology itself follows the pattern.
Seems like it, even down to atoms and how electrons arrange themselves. It suggests this pattern isn't just a drawing, it's fundamental to how things are built, maybe, showing interconnectedness.
And that connects to that powerful quote from the physicist John Wheeler, "Geometry is physics." That's a pretty radical statement, isn't it?
It really is. It suggests that maybe the most basic stuff isn't particles, but shapes, geometric forms.
And even something like string theory, which our sources touch on. The idea there is that everything is made of tiny vibrating strings. And the way they vibrate, which determines what particle or force appears, is described using geometry and math.
Okay, wow. And then there's the golden ratio, phi. That number, like 1.618, it seems to pop up everywhere. What's the deal with that? It's linked to the Fibonacci sequence too, right? 1, 1, 2, 3, 5.
Exactly. Each number is the sum of the two before it. And the ratio between consecutive numbers gets closer and closer to phi, the golden ratio.
Okay. So why is that ratio so special?
Well, look around in nature. The spirals in a sunflower seeds, the scales on a pine cone, how trees branch out, even the arms of spiral galaxies. They often follow Fibonacci numbers, or the golden ratio.
Uh-huh.
The thinking is, it might be the most efficient way for things to grow or organize energy. Like, nature figured out this optimal geometric pathway. It's like a built-in efficiency principle.
Like the universe prefers this particular mathematical beauty because it works best. Fascinating. Okay, but the deep dive also gets into some really wild quantum physics stuff.
Yeah, suggesting these geometric ideas are showing up even at the tiniest scales imaginable.
You mean like the Planck scale? Super, super small.
Right, and the idea there is that space-time itself might not be smooth down there. It might be more like a quantum foam.
Quantum foam, okay.
And the structure of that foam, some theories propose, could follow specific geometric patterns.
Huh.
One mentioned is the E8 pattern. What is that exactly?
Okay, from what I gathered, E8 is this incredibly complex shape, but it exists in like 8 dimensions. It has 248 points or something.
8 dimensions, wow.
Yeah. And some physicists, like Garrett Lisi, who's mentioned, think this E8 structure might actually be the key to a theory of everything, a single geometric framework that explains all the fundamental particles and forces.
So the ultimate reality could be this incredibly intricate geometric object, like a master key, as you said before, where each part corresponds to something fundamental.
Pretty mind-blowing concept. And that naturally leads to thinking about energy at that level, doesn't it? Which brings us to crystals.
Right, crystallography. The source links the geometric structure of crystals to their energy properties.
Makes sense. Crystals are inherently geometric, right? Atoms lined up in perfect lattices, and different lattice shapes mean different energy properties, different ways they resonate, and even water. The source mentions how water can form hexagonal ice crystals when it freezes, and that the specific shape can apparently be influenced by sound or electromagnetic frequencies it was exposed to.
Yeah, the work of Masaru Emoto comes up there. It's definitely controversial in mainstream science.
Right, noted.
But the core idea that energy or intention could influence water's structure and create different geometric forms, it definitely fits this broader theme we're exploring, this link between energy and geometry. It keeps the conversation going.
Definitely. And that ties in perfectly with cymatics, doesn't it? The idea that sound actually creates visible shapes. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. Cymatics is amazing to watch. You basically vibrate a surface, maybe with sand or liquid on it, using sound.
Okay.
And the particles or liquid spontaneously arrange themselves into these beautiful, complex geometric patterns. Change the frequency of the sound, and you get a different pattern. Higher frequencies usually make more complex shapes.
So you can literally see sound making geometry.
Exactly. It's a very direct demonstration that form can arise from vibration. And Hans Jenny's work back in the 60s, which our source mentions, produced patterns that looked remarkably similar to ancient sacred symbols in mandalas.
Which suggests this isn't a new discovery, but maybe an ancient understanding of a universal principle. Vibration equals form.
It really seems that way. It changes how you think about the world, doesn't it? Seeing it as a vibrational structure.
Totally. Okay, so moving from the purely physical, what about living things? Bio-electromagnetism.
Right. Living organisms aren't just chemistry. We generate electromagnetic fields. And these fields seem to have geometric patterns too.
Like the heart's field, I read that's much stronger than the brain's.
Yeah, significantly stronger, extending out from the body. And research, like from the HeartMath Institute, shows that when we're feeling good, coherent, harmonious, our heart's electromagnetic waveform becomes more ordered, more geometrically smooth.
And when we're stressed?
It becomes more chaotic, less patterned. They measure this with heart rate variability, or HRV. And the cool thing is you can learn to consciously shift into more coherent states, creating more ordered geometric patterns in your field, which links to better health and thinking.
So our inner state literally shapes the geometry of our energy field.
That's
Pretty profound. Okay, what about fractals, those repeating patterns?
Ah, yes, fractals. They're all about self-similarity patterns, repeating at smaller and smaller scales. Think of a fern leaf.
Where the little bits look like the whole leaf.
Exactly. Or coastlines, mountains, river networks. Mandelbrot really opened up our understanding of this. It turns out lots of complex natural shapes can be described by simple repeating fractal rules.
And we have them inside us too.
We do. Our lungs, our nervous system, blood vessels, they all use fractal branching patterns. It's incredibly efficient for maximizing surface area or distributing things. Nature uses fractal geometry for optimal design.
Efficiency again. It seems like nature's code is written in geometry for maximum efficiency and, well, beauty. Okay, shifting slightly.
Yeah.
What about our brains? How do we respond to these shapes? Neuroaesthetics.
Right, that's the study of how our brain perceives beauty. And research suggests that humans, kind of universally, tend to react positively to things proportioned with the golden ratio or other balanced geometries.
Regardless of culture.
Seems so. Some studies even show that looking at sacred geometry can lead to more integrated brain activity, different parts working together more coherently.
Which might explain why they're used in meditation, maybe? They help harmonize the brain?
That's the idea. Like our brains are somehow tuned to recognize and resonate with these fundamental harmonies.
Okay. The source material also dives into some really abstract territory, like quantum information and the holographic principle. How does geometry fit in there?
Yeah, this gets mind-bending. The holographic principle suggests all the info in a 3D space might actually be encoded on its 2D boundary, like a hologram.
Wow.
And the connection made is to that old Hermetic idea, as above, so below. Patterns repeating at different scales. David Bohn's implicate order idea also fits the idea that our reality unfolds from a deeper, hidden geometric order.
So the universe as a giant geometric hologram.
That's the kind of radical idea being explored. It's still theoretical, of course, but the resonance with ancient geometric concepts is fascinating.
And then there's string theory again, suggesting even more dimensions.
Right. String theory needs extra spatial dimensions, like 10 or more, for the math to work. So our familiar 3D world could just be a projection, a shadow, of a higher dimensional geometric reality.
Right.
Like Plato's cave allegory, where prisoners mistake shadows for reality.
Wow.
And fundamental physics relies heavily on geometric ideas like symmetry groups to describe forces and particles. So geometry seems baked into reality at the deepest levels science can probe.
It really flips the script. Geometry isn't just in the world, it might be the world, or at least the scaffolding. Okay, so that lays some amazing scientific groundwork. Let's pivot now to the second big area. The link between sacred geometry and human consciousness.
Right. The idea here is that geometry isn't just structuring matter. It's also like a template for how consciousness and energy interact.
An interface language.
Exactly. Ancient traditions seem to get this intuitively, using these forms to shift awareness. And now science is finding clues too.
Okay, so what does neuroscience say about how our brains actually process these geometric patterns?
Well, EEG studies measuring brainwaves show something interesting. When people look at certain sacred geometry patterns, especially things with the golden ratio or five-fold symmetry, you see increased synchrony, coordination between different brain areas, particularly the prefrontal and parietal lobes.
And that's linked to
higher thinking, creativity, focus, those flow states people talk about. The speculation is that these shapes might resonate with the brain's own network structure, promoting harmonious activity.
So the geometry outside influences the geometry, or at least the organized activity, inside our heads.
Interesting. What about those holographic brain theories?
Right. Karl Prubram's idea that memories aren't stored in one spot, but are distributed holographically across the brain.
Like Bohn's holographic universe idea we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. If the brain processes information holographically, using universal geometric principles, then maybe looking at sacred geometry directly activates those processing patterns, like the brain recognizes its own language.
A common code. That's a cool idea. Okay, what about energy medicine? How does geometry show up there?
Well, many traditions, like Chinese medicine with its meridians or yogic philosophy with chakras, describe the human energy system as having a geometric structure.
And even modern biofield research, like Kurotkov's GDV imaging that the source mentions, suggests that healthy people have more symmetrical, geometrically ordered energy fields. Imbalances show up as irregularities.
So, geometric coherence in our energy field equals health.
That seems to be the implication. Maintaining that inner geometric harmony seems important for well-being.
It makes sense. Okay, meditation. You mentioned using geometry in meditation. How did that affect brainwaves?
Yes, studies show that focusing on sacred geometry can help people get into alpha and theta brainwave states more easily. Those are the states linked to relaxation, creativity, intuition.
Faster than other methods.
Sometimes, yes. And what's really interesting is that experienced meditators who use, say, mandalas, seem to shift into those states almost automatically just by looking at the pattern.
Like it becomes a trigger, a kind of consciousness technology.
That's a good way to put it. Like the geometry acts as a tuning fork, training the brain to find those beneficial frequencies.
And the Shri Yantra is mentioned as a prime example, right? That super complex pattern.
Oh yeah, the Shri Yantra is incredible. It's made of 9 interlocking triangles, creating 43 smaller ones, all in layers around a central point.
Wow.
And get this, if you vibrate that pattern, like with sound, cymatics again, it apparently creates wave patterns that correspond to the locations of the chakras in the body.
Seriously?
That's what some analyses show. And some research suggests that meditating on it can boost gamma brainwaves, which are linked to insight and peak awareness. It's a powerful example of geometry seemingly interacting with our energy and mind.
That's wild. A physical pattern mapping onto an energetic system and influencing brainwaves.
Okay, what about quantum biology? Can geometry play a role down at that tiny level within us?
It's a newer field, but quantum biology is finding quantum effects like coherence and entanglement are actually important in living things, photosynthesis, bird navigation, maybe even brain function.
Right.
And these quantum processes often involve specific geometric arrangements. So, if consciousness itself has a quantum element, as someone like Roger Penrose proposes, then geometry could directly influence consciousness at that fundamental quantum level.
It's conceivable.
Yeah.
A very cutting-edge idea, linking the geometry of quantum events inside us directly to our subjective experience.
Blurring the lines again between physics and consciousness. Okay, shifting to psychology, Carl Jung. How does his work connect archetypes and geometry?
Jung noticed that fundamental archetypes, those universal symbols in the collective unconscious, often appear as geometric forms. The circle for wholeness, the cross for balance, the mandala for the self. And he saw that people going through deep psychological growth often spontaneously draw or dream about geometric patterns, especially mandalas. He thought it was the psyche trying to organize itself, find balance, using this fundamental geometric language.
So geometry is like the psyche's native tongue for integration. Cool. What about altered states, shamanic experiences?
Yeah, the source points out how consistently people report seeing geometric patterns, grids, spirals, tunnels, honeycombs, and shamanic states, often induced by plant medicines across different cultures.
They call them form constants, right?
Exactly. Now, neuroscience might explain it by how the visual cortex is wired. But the fact that these spontaneous visions align so well with ancient sacred geometry is, well, suggestive, isn't it?
It definitely makes you wonder if it's more than just random firing, maybe tapping into some deeper visual structure of consciousness. And these patterns are used therapeutically too, mandalas for anxiety.
Yes, quite successfully apparently, using mandalas for anxiety, focus issues, even chronic pain. The idea is that focusing on or creating these patterns can calm the autonomic nervous system.
Wow.
It seems to lower stress hormones like cortisol, maybe boost endorphins. There's even research mentioned about using it with PTSD patients, possibly helping integrate trauma through the brain's pattern recognition systems, fostering wholeness.
Amazing how a visual pattern can have such deep physiological and psychological effects. The source also mentions Stanislav Grof's work, finding geometric structures in different levels of consciousness.
Right. Grof, through his work with holotropic breathwork and psychedelics, mapped out different domains of consciousness, personal memories, birth experiences, transpersonal archetypal realms.
Okay.
And he found that each of these levels seemed to have its own characteristic geometric feel or structure. It led him to suggest that consciousness itself might be inherently structured geometrically.
That the structure of experience is geometric. That's a big idea.
It really is, and it connects to those vibration field theories of consciousness too.
Explain that link.
Well, some theories propose consciousness isn't just in the brain, but arises from energy fields interacting with the brain. And these fields themselves might have geometric structures and frequencies. So sacred geometry patterns could act like antennas or resonators, tuning or amplifying these consciousness fields. The source compares it to Wheeler's geometry as physics, suggesting maybe consciousness fields create geometric forms, and geometric forms guide consciousness flow.
A two-way street between geometry and the energy fields of consciousness. Wow. Okay, and then there's embodied cognition, the idea that we think with our whole body.
Yeah, that thinking isn't just brain-bound. It involves our entire physical being, which is, of course, a geometric structure.
Right.
Think about practices like yoga or qigong. They use specific postures, essentially, geometric shapes made with the body to influence energy flow and awareness. And research does show posture affects mood and thinking. The geometry of our body impacts our mind.
So even how we sit or stand is part of this geometric interplay with consciousness. And what about our surroundings, the geometry of buildings?
Architectural psychology studies this. The shapes and proportions of spaces we're in affect our brain activity and how we feel.
Makes sense intuitively.
And spaces designed with sacred geometric principles, like using the golden ratio, often make people feel more comfortable, focused, creative. It makes you think ancient sacred sites were deliberately built with specific geometries to act as consciousness accelerators, maybe.
Catalysts for specific states of mind. Built environments designed to tune consciousness. Okay, so wrapping this section up, the big idea seems to be that sacred geometry is maybe the fundamental language connecting matter and consciousness, as above, so below.
Exactly. That core Hermetic principle seems perfectly embodied here. The idea that the patterns we see out there in the cosmos, the macrocosm, are mirrored inside us, in the microcosm, and even in the structure of consciousness itself. Sacred geometry might just be that unifying pattern language that weaves it all together.
That's a really powerful unifying thought, a single geometric code running through everything. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it feels clear that sacred geometry is way more than just cool shapes. It's like discovering this fundamental mathematical language.
Yeah, one that connects everything, and it acts as a tool, both for understanding the big picture, the universe, and for personal transformation.
And what really strikes me is how ancient wisdom and modern science seem to be increasingly saying similar things about it, just using different words.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway, I think, for anyone listening is that this isn't just theory. It's presented as a practical system. There are things you can do with this knowledge.
Right, like meditation with geometric forms, or even just being more aware of the geometry in your environment, maybe designing your space differently.
Exactly. The potential for improving well-being, boosting creativity, deepening awareness. It seems really tangible based on what we've explored.
It also makes you think about our role in all this, doesn't it? If consciousness interacts with this geometric structure of reality, are we more like co-creators than just observers?
That's a profound implication, for sure, that our awareness, maybe through this geometric interface, actively participates in shaping reality.
It reminds me of that Wolfgang Pauli quote the source mentioned, about the mystic and science meeting and transforming each other.
Yeah, it feels very relevant here. Sacred geometry seems right at that meeting point, offering a more whole, integrated way of seeing things.
So it's not just about learning the names of shapes, like dodecahedrons or whatever. It's about feeling the principles behind the shapes.
Precisely. Seeing the world as this incredible, interconnected dance of energy,
Yeah.
choreographed by this universal mathematical language.
And the advice seems to be, approach it gently, right? Be patient, stay curious.
Definitely. The initial effects might be subtle, but the potential for real shifts in awareness, creativity, health, spiritual connection seems to grow with practice and exploration.
And it's a personal journey too. Like, pay attention to which shapes or patterns really speak to you. They might be your specific keys.
That makes sense. It's about resonance, what resonates with your unique energy and path.
You know, the idea that our ability to even recognize beauty and harmony in these patterns might be because we're fundamentally connected to that cosmic intelligence that designed them. It's pretty inspiring.
It is. Like, observing this geometric beauty gives us a little glimpse of that unified reality beyond all the separation we usually feel.
So the final invitation is just start exploring, right? Or keep exploring if you've already started. Draw something, meditate on a pattern, notice the geometry around you.
Yeah, just participate consciously in that cosmic dance expressed through geometry. Be curious.
Which leaves us with that final thought to chew on. Could that feeling, we get that intuitive sense of, yes, that's beautiful, or that feels right when we see these balanced geometric forms. Could that be more than just liking a picture?
Could it be perhaps a direct echo, a resonance deep within us recognizing the fundamental structure of the universe itself, a structure that's both perfectly mathematical and somehow profoundly meaningful?